Hey folks, I thought you might like an update on the yard and gardens. Recent rains have improved situations greatly. This is wild senna, a favorite of pollinators. You can see a bumbus or a bumblebee flitting about. It's Lola Jean. Yeah. What do you think, girlfriend? Hello? This is wild bergamot, another favorite of bumblebees and many pollinators. In the background, the tall plant that you see there, these are jewelweed, sometimes called touch-me-not because their seed pods, after they flower, their seed pods will explode if you touch them. This was the first plant that I did research on, Impatiens capensis. We compared it to invasive Ranunculus ficaria. There's a New England aster in the background. Lots more impatiens. They grow wild. Beautiful orange little flower. I don't think there's any in bloom yet, but the hummingbirds love it, and so I kind of let it grow wherever it pops up. This is a dwarf version of goldenrod. I remember joking about a friend that bought a dwarf version of goldenrod, and here I am finding that I enjoy it immensely. It blooms before the native. And dwarf versions are nice because sometimes the large versions can get really tall, flop over, grow out of control. This is cardinal flower. Lobelia cardinalis, I think, yeah. Beautiful red flower. It'll bloom here soon. It's another hummingbird favorite. And one of my ultimate favorites, the Echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower. And there's a cultivar, this orange one. It's Cheyenne something. I forget the name of it. But they start out with this bright orange when they're young, and then they mature a little bit more sort of a orange coral-like color, and then they fade out into pink. This is a bee balm. It's Monarda didyma, I think, yeah. In the background, we have, this is another lobelia, great blue lobelia. These are pretty blue flowers. They're just on the cusp of blooming. There's a big cluster here, and some liatris in the background. And a Joe Pye weed. This is my flower garden. It used to be sunny, became shady, and it's transitioning from conventional plants to natives. Another hummingbird favorite. This is royal catchfly. Excuse me, almost forgot there. You can see it's a beauty. Hummingbirds have been enjoying it for the last week or so. It's pretty. And I always keep some non-natives. I love lavender. This is wild petunia. Blooms open early in the morning, but then they close by this time of day. I think it's one bloom per day, if I remember correctly. And the pond, there's a big hole in it somewhere. It's just a frog pond right now. I don't have fish in it anymore, but I have to fill it every now and then. So we're gonna, I don't know, maybe dig it up. I'd love to have a bigger pond. We'll see. I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. And the bees in the bird bath. They need a water source to not only drink, but also cool the hive. They take water in and then they fan the hive to cool the entrance, kind of like a built-in air conditioner. Of course, they also drink the water, but it's a lot of it's for brood rearing too. They use water and pollen to make a substance called bee bread for the brood, the developing larvae that they feed to them. Pollen is a source of protein. Garden's looking pretty good. I was watering daily. I don't know if you've ever seen lettuce that has bolted. So I'm letting my lettuce go to seed this year so that I can collect those seed. This is an heirloom variety, or several heirloom varieties. It's called Wildest Mixed. So I'm just kind of letting it all go. I'll collect the seeds and use those in the future. They're heirloom varieties, so they should bloom true to the parent rather than cross-pollinating. Handful of green beans and zucchini there. And I also have a volunteer squash. Not sure what kind, but it looks like a little pumpkin down in there. Let's see if I can capture it here. There we go. So maybe it'll work out. I have a troublesome time with squash bugs and squash vine borer, so I don't do well with squash. Sunflowers have hit their peak on their way down. Beautiful. Of course, always a pollinator favorite. There we go. Those are a native bee. I think that's a long-tongued bee. Can you see that? Oh, it's gone. Let's see. Here comes another one. They flit about real quickly. They might be squash bees, I'm not sure. Take a walk in the garden. Got a late set of corn here. Doing pretty good so far. Lots of things in containers. Here's tomatillo. If you've never seen tomatillo growing, the fruit develop inside this little pocket. Kind of looks like a Chinese lantern. And some cucumbers growing in a pot. Again, I have such a hard time growing squash. I don't like to use a lot of pesticides or other stuff like that, so it's hard to combat some of the pests. Sometimes I just do without. Ooh, nice big jet going into Wilmington. First time I've used this A-frame for tomatoes, and I have to say that I love it. Also my first time using straw in the garden. I'm not a fan. It works. I ran out of my own natural leaves and grass clipping mulch, and so I had to use some straw. It keeps the weeds at bay, keeps the diseases from bouncing up after the rain and infecting the plants. They look fantastic. I'm just not a fan of it. You got to pull the wheat once it germinates, and it's just bulky, cumbersome, so I'm not a fan, but it is what it is. It works. These are some white pines that we're growing in pots. Believe it or not, white pines have gotten extremely expensive, even though they're common and relatively native, I think, to most of this area. So my latest little secret is buying things bare root at a fraction of the cost and growing them in pots for a year or two before planting them in the landscape. It's a heck of a lot cheaper, and I'm out here watering in the garden every day anyway, so it works. These are heirloom variety tomato slicers, big yellow, red, Cherokee purple, brandywine, pineapple, all sorts. Had a lot of them ripen early and then had sort of a lull, and they're beginning to ripen again. This bed is specifically Roma style tomatoes. This variety is Amish paste. Most Romas are determinate, meaning that they sort of they culminate at one time, essentially, so that they finish early all at one time, and those are great for canning. This is a Roma variety, so to speak, but they are indeterminate, meaning they'll continue to grow. So one of my favorites. I usually grow Romas, San Marzano, as well as Amish paste. And the last few years, I like the Amish paste best. They're very, they're not juicy. They're not very acidic. They're mostly meaty flesh. Great for canning, sauces, and canning whole. I just cleared out the brassica bed today. Much of it was going to seed, and I was going to collect it, but it's just a pain in the butt. So I decided to clean out the bed, harvested some cabbage. I'm not sure if I'm going to make some kraut or something else. We'll see. Been growing a lot of tomatoes in containers this year, and that's because I'm lacking in sun. As time has passed, trees have grown, as is always. Gardens start out full sun, and they oftentimes will change into a shady area, and that's what's happened here. First set of corn mostly got decimated by slugs in the beginning, and then I had maybe 4 or 5 stalks that survived, and the raccoons got it. I have 2 ears developing, and I tried to hand pollinate them today. We'll see if we'll get 2 ears. No big deal. I water anyway. This is the second set. I don't grow much corn. I don't can it. I don't freeze it. We eat it fresh, and that's about it. And there's just 2 of us, so a dozen or 2 at a time is all I usually grow. Green beans. We like the haricots verts, the French variety. They form long, skinny pods. Cook up in no time. Great steaming. I like growing peppers in pots, especially the hot peppers. You can see I've got some jalapenos, some Thai chilies, habaneros, and the leeks that self-sowed from last year. I was just too lazy to clean them out or do anything much with them. So I'll just harvest them however they turn out. Onions are getting close. I've got reds and cipollinis in this bed, and I've got Walla Walla and several sweet yellow varieties, good for storing, in this bed. Let's see here. Pepper bed, doing pretty good. This bed gets a little too much shade. I intended the peppers to be more up front in the sun, and it just didn't work out that way this year, so just working with what I've got. But they're doing pretty good. One of my faves. Here's a good poblano developing there. Oops, let's see if we can get without the sun's glare. I've got sweet bells and hot peppers and a little bit of everything. Mushroom bed that has yet to fruit. We'll see if we get any compost. I've always got something growing out of my compost. With compost, in order for it to break down, you either need to turn it often to oxygenate and introduce moisture to the bed to increase breakdown, and it actually heats up enough to kill weed seeds, or time. And I have to admit, not that I'm lazy, but I'm not a turner, so I use time. And I've got two stalls essentially, but I divide it into 4 sections. You can see different varieties. This is a mixture of chicken manure, wood shavings, their bedding, plant debris, kitchen waste, a little bit of everything gets in here. I do turn it, just not often. This is the most recent. I've got chicks right now, and this was their last bedding. Pretty stinky last week, but it has mellowed out a bit. This is some ginger, just grocery store ginger. I potted up a couple months ago. I'll probably put it into larger pots and bring it in for the winter. We'll see how it goes. My little pinky man. Hi, buddy. So things in the prairie are getting ready to pop. We've got some woodland sunflowers. They got rain in time. We did actually purchase a large sprinkler. I couldn't let it go this year, and so one of those kind that oscillate, and the I'll show you here when we get around to it. It's not very colorful right now, of course, because it's lots of goldenrod, but there's some. It's in the evening. Bees are doing pretty well. Let's see what we got. This is the newest hive. And take a close look if we can. You can see, watch when they come in, when they fly in, you'll see along their hind legs, you will see, I don't think they're called hind legs, but anyway, they have little pollen sacs that they fill while they're gathering nectar. They also gather pollen for the developing brood, like I was talking about earlier. So you can see those. See the little yellow pockets? Pollen can come in a variety of colors. Of course, contains lots of protein for the developing brood. And so while the bees gather their nectar, the plants benefit from pollination. This is probably my biggest. I got the most honey off of this hive. This is probably the most active set of girls here. So they're doing well. Got 7 hives at the moment. So here's a different view. There's some milkweed. It's already bloomed. Queen Anne's lace. It's related to carrot. It's plants in the carrot family. Gosh, I forget the name of the family. They are a host plant for swallowtail butterflies. I actually have a swallowtail caterpillar up on my parsley, which is also related, up by the house. That's New England aster getting ready to bloom. This is one plant, and it blooms before the rest. So long before the rest, actually several weeks. And so I'm going to collect seeds specifically from this plant this year so that I can have an early blooming variety. I'm going to start some seeds as well as sow them. Still Daisy Fleabane is doing well, if you remember from the last video. And here's the woodland sunflower, which I was questioning whether or not it would bloom. It's doing okay. Like I said, we ran the sprinkler. I have well water, and it's pretty good, pretty deep, no fear of running out, so I do water from time to time. My lawn is mostly clover for the bees, which is not native, but it's just, it's very beneficial around here. Wild bergamot, so aromatic, beautiful flower, favorite of pollinators. This is not Joe Pye, it's ironweed. Getting ready to bloom. Pretty purple flower. Usually when the ironweed's in bloom, you can hear the entire prairie alight with buzzing bees, buzzing pollinators. Again, I think native field thistle. Jump across here and we'll take a look at what's going on elsewhere. Pretty weedy looking to most people if you don't know what's going on. More coneflower and some liatris. Timothy. This grass, this is Timothy here. I don't know much about grasses. I'm not going to pretend I do. I just know that's Timothy. Phlox blooming. This is garden phlox, which is kind of weird. Prairie Moon Nursery sells it with their natives. I don't think it's considered invasive. It doesn't take over. It fills in though. Still a little longer before the goldenrod begins to bloom. Oh, but let me show you something. We have new fruit ripening. Let's go take a look. The black raspberry patch, of course, it's done for now. All these new shoots will produce fruit next year. Looks good. Can't wait. I've had a heck of a harvest this year. Made jam, made mead. Still have some in the freezer. Not sure what I'm going to do next. Some desserts maybe. I'm not a dessert person because I don't like to bake. I don't like to follow recipes. Yeah, I study science, but I don't like to follow recipes. This is the patch of yellow raspberries. First time growing these. Deer browse is heavy this year. That's one of the fallbacks of planting native plants for wildlife, is more deer browse. But that's kind of what I'm doing, is planting things for native wildlife. If I can get some jam or jelly or different things, I'll appreciate it. There's the golden raspberries. Look at them. I can't wait. I'm hoping the deer don't find them before I eat them. Not too many blackberries. These are thornless blackberries. I've been eating them as they ripen, trying to stay ahead of the birds. Pears are coming along nicely this year. Hopefully oh, I forget, it's called Prairie. I think it's called Prairie. It's some kind of wine, mead, something or other that I'm gonna try to make this year. I read about it, but I haven't tried it yet. They're always ugly, of course, but if you're gonna turn them into some sort of a juice, extract, alcohol, who cares? So it'll be, gosh, I think September before the goldenrod bloom. These little rosettes, they sort of open up into that. They send out shoots. Your mourning dove in the background, lots of birds. It's funny, a lot of the YouTubers that I follow, I never hear birds in their videos. And that's all I hear here. So I take that as a good sign that I'm doing something right and attracting lots of birds. Sort of like integrated pest management, right? They take care of some of the bad bugs. This is saw cut sunflower, a native. It'll bloom yellow here shortly, right behind the woodland sunflower. They get pretty tall. So after they bloom and the seeds begin to mature, I cut them down because they're tall and ugly as our annual sunflowers. And so I take them and just spread them all throughout the prairie because I really like them. They're pretty. Right. Oh, got some powdery mildew on this bergamot. Look at that. This is the only one. No heads on it. It got eaten by something. I forget what. Ooh, it looks nasty. This is a sassafras, planted by birds, I assume. It was defoliated by Japanese beetles, came back, and then they're starting to attack it again. Of course, the Japanese beetles didn't come out hot and heavy this year because it's been so dry. Every time it rains, we get a flush, so it's been a lot more easy to control. That's the back side of the bee yard. This area gets shaded a little bit by the sycamore planted here not too long ago. It's been less than 10 years. It's grown quite quickly. I have a patch of invasive reed canary grass here, and I meant to spray it this year, and I didn't. Yes, I use sprays judiciously and very carefully, but I cut the seed heads off. And hopefully, I'm kind of hoping that the goldenrod keep it under control. We'll see. Maybe it'll be sort of an experiment. Who knows? This area is shaded, of course, by the silver maples. And so my prairie sort of divided into different sects because shade, you can see here, big trees that shade certain areas. There's full sun out by the road. So we get a variety of different plants that excel in these areas. This area I hope to develop, we've got some blue spruce that have not done well, died out, so we're going to get rid of those. And I've got some pawpaws in here, and I'm hoping to another group of bare root shrubs and trees, chokecherry and currant. What else do I have? Plums and all sorts of things that I hope to plant back here and get rid of the old-fashioned oh gosh, forsythia. Couldn't remember the name there for a minute. That blooms yellow in the early spring. They're ugly at this point. This is a really nice pawpaw. It's, gosh, probably 6 or 7 years old now. It hasn't fruited yet, but I think next year might be the year. Some herbivory going on. I don't know whether that is the, this is a host plant for zebra swallowtail, and I've been looking for them. I haven't seen them, but I have seen the leaves chewed on, so, that's what's called herbivory, when insects eat leaves, or animals eat leaves. It doesn't necessarily have, insects are animals, but that's beside the point. Anyway, you get the idea. So, hopefully that will grow and produce fruit. Some tasty, custardy, sweet pawpaws. It's the closest thing that North America has to a tropical fruit, if you ask me. But that's about it for today, I think. Hope you enjoyed the tour. Kind of new at this. We'll see how it goes. Good night.